Okay, today we're going to convert the old style round plug here, if you can see that, to the new larger round plug. Now the things to do this is on an older truck. It's a 94 Chevy truck, and so there's a couple of ways that the current wiring can be set up, and that is going to be something that you're going to want to take a look at on your truck to see how the current wiring is set up, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you come underneath here, I didn't do this, it's a truck I just bought, but you can see the existing wiring harness up underneath the bed, back up in there, back up there. That wiring harness comes apart. It should come apart right here is where it comes apart. You can buy a trailer splice that you simply unplug this, and it comes with two plugs. One plugs in, it's an inline trailer wiring setup where it just plugs to both sides of it. It's a plug and go. Whoever set this up originally didn't do that. They cut into the wiring harness and spliced it all together, kind of old style, which is fine. Had they not done that, I could have just plugged that in, and I still could possibly still plug that in, but so I'm going to use instead, I'm going to convert the old wiring. So back up in here, back of the plug there, I'm going to cut those 4 wires. They're pretty simple. If you need a wiring diagram, look it up. And those 4 wires match these 4 wires here, right here on this plug. Now if you have a flat plug already, this just plugs in and will automatically convert to this. I don't have that set up, so I got one of these, and I'm going to take those 4 wires, cut the end of this off, hardwire them onto these 4 so that I have a plug that I can plug right into here. And the reason I'm doing that rather than just cutting this and hardwiring them onto that, I don't know how long I'll own this truck. So when that time comes, I can simply unplug my connection and take my wiring harness to my next vehicle, and the next person will still have a pretty common wiring setup that they can use. If I knew I was going to hang on to the truck for a long time, I would probably cut these off and direct wire them into that, but I'm not going to do that because I can remove it easier. So what you'll need, a wiring harness like this, and one thing to consider is some trailers I pull still have that flat connection, and this harness, you can buy a lot of these, this one happens to still offer that flat connection, and I like that, so I don't have to hook a different boot on. So later, in fact, here's one I'll show you in the back of the FJ here. It's so bright, I don't know if you can see it. So here is the setup we use all the time, and then if we have to, you can just pull this and there's your flat setup. So I think this is definitely the way to go versus carrying a converter, because you can get a converter that goes into this from that, but then I always lose it if I don't have it with me. So in order to do that, you're going to need whichever harness you want to use. I'm choosing to use this so that I can wire this onto the truck and then just plug them together so I can get this off easier. To hardwire it, you need some of these wire crimpers or something like this. This will, you poke a wire in both sides, in this side, in this side. It has a metal ring in there. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's kind of blurry. That metal ring then crimps onto that wire that makes a connection. This is the crimpers that do that. And you'll see that right here, it'll actually, this forms into here, and then that dents this in. What that does is it doesn't just flat crimp it, it rams the metal in to secure it really well. If you don't have a set of these, you can use some pliers and mash it flat. Just be really careful, because I've mashed it flat before and it can still pull apart. So really mash it if you're going to mash it. But I don't think these are that expensive, probably under 10 bucks, and they're pretty handy to have. They have little nippers on the end. You can cut wires, and I only use them though for crimping these little connectors. I don't have the size of these offhand. They come in boxes like this. You can probably buy less somewhere. These are a little smaller, so I'm not going to be using those, but that's what I'm going to do here, and I'll outline it step by step. Alright, so step one, cut those wires off the back of that plug. Because I'm leaving the plug in, because if I take it off then I have a hole in the bumper, I'm just going to leave it there. I think it looks better. I'm going to cut this so I have some length still. So I'm going to cut it back here so I can, so later, for whatever reason, if someone ever wants to hook that back up, they can still use that plug, and it will be easy to put some inline splices in there. So step one is to cut that. Okay. So now that's cut, you can see they're color coded. It's probably safe to double check anyway. Get your tester and we can test the hot bulb and make sure what each one is going to. So it's pretty simple setup, and you can find all kinds of wiring diagrams online on which one those go to. So the next thing is to test and see how long this is. And I'm going to be mounting that here on the bottom of the bumper. It's pretty long by itself, so I don't really need to add much length. Make sure you keep the right end. And you know what's the right end, because look at the harness we're going to be plugging into. So there's the male end, so we need the female end that plugs into that. So I'm going to be cutting this here, maybe 6 inches, 4 inches of wire to splice that here. Okay, so got my pigtail here. I decided that was the right length I wanted to keep on here. Next, I didn't put this in the video, but wire strippers, very handy. These are kind of adhered together, and on the front of these wire strippers there are some little grippers that don't cut. You can just grab them real gently and just kind of peel down a few inches to separate them. There's a 14 gauge wire, so on the wire stripper just look up the 14 gauge setting. Now you don't need to peel off strip very much, because it doesn't go very far in those little splicers I have. So crimp it on 14, pull it off. Go get those splices and color match them up. Make sure they hooked them up right, but I know these ones are hooked up right, so color matching them up is going to work in this case. Strip those off. You're going to want to twist. Those are individual strand wires right there. You're going to want to twist them together so that when you poke, don't twist the wires together, just twist these copper wires together on each color, because when you poke it in, you don't want to bend any of those back. It helps if you get the right size ones of these, so if there's too much space in there, it's really hard to crimp on. They should just slide in. There's not a lot of extra room. If you don't cut this short enough, it'll poke through the other side, and then you don't have room to poke this one in. So it's really helpful if it's only about half, so this one has room to poke in there. What I like to do is poke it on, and don't crimp it all the way, just enough so that they're not falling off. So grab onto it, just give it a little squish. That didn't compress this side. I still need this side open to poke onto there, but it's just enough that it's not going to come off. And I do that on each one, so they're not fully seated at all, but just enough. Now they're not going to be falling off on me near as bad. They might still fall off, but not as much as they would if they were just totally loose. Okay, so white to white. Start on the end. Now you can tight compress. And I like to do it all the way down. Make sure that's really crimping on there. This is where you don't want to have any loose wires down the road, and It's easy to do it right now versus down the road and you're up camping and can't figure out why your trailer lights aren't working. Okay, so now we're going to route this where you want to put it. I'm putting it up over my receiver hitch here. Here's my boot that plugs into. This has ability to hook onto trailer brakes and other things that I'm not going to be using for this rig. This has a bracket that it mounts to. Pop all that off. Carefully remove everything. So this bracket, hope you can see it there, I'm going to be mounting it up under here in just a minute. Pre-drill it with a small hole, some self-tapping metal screws, and it will mount right on. It comes with the hardware for this bracket. So, nice tight start. Just start spiral wrapping it like you do a hockey stick handle or the stripes on the candy cane. Just start spiraling that up and stick it back on itself. If you end right here, it has a tendency to peel off. So wind it back down a hair and end on it. So that's all I'm going to do for that. That weather sealed my connections. Slide it back up over where it goes. Okay, so the next step, figure out where you want your bracket. I decided I want it right there. Made some marks. I don't know if they're showing up on the camera, but here's some. The bumper's too thick to just ram it through, even though they're self-tapping. So this is a 9/64 drill bit. Doesn't matter the size. You just need to figure out whatever drill bit you have that's a hair smaller than the threads on your screw. That's what this one happens to be, but you can use whatever screw you want. So I'm going to go ahead, drill my pilot holes. Okay, got my 2 pilot holes drilled. Stick all this through. And this guy mounts right there. Okay, so then after that's mounted, this sits right here and slides in that slot. And so it's a pretty cool setup. You got your main plug, got your flat plug in case you're pulling someone else's trailer or something, a little boat. Last step, grab some zip ties. These are available anywhere. I like Harbor Freight for them. Half the time you get a pack for free if you buy something. I like the bigger, thicker ones. I can cut off the excess. I have some longer white ones, but I'm going to try using black. I think they're large enough for this. They'll just hide a little bit better. You just want to secure this somehow. Try to get it up out of the way, up out of the road grime, so it's not going to fall apart or get hooked on something. Okay, everything is zip tied on, secured up underneath. All the wires are tucked up out of the way, and that's it. Nice and tight, ready to go. It's easy to remove. When I sell the truck, I can easily unplug the boot and keep my wiring harness for the next rig. They're only maybe 25 bucks, but it's nice not to have to sell it with the truck every time. And that's it.